Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. My name is Andrew Sumner, and I am privileged to be joined in this session by the wonderful artist, educator, Kathryn Briggs. How are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Very well. Thanks for beaming in to chat with us today. And world-renowned, infamous, famous crime author, Val McDermid. How are you, Val?
Hi there. I'm very well, thank you. Sitting looking at the sea.
Oh, brilliant. I wish I was. I'm actually just looking at a ring light next to a blank wall. So I'll imagine your view, which is far superior to mine. Kathryn, are you getting an external view where you are?
Yes, I look out upon the back garden.
Ah, lovely. Yeah, nice. If I look over there, I get some nice flowers and trees though. So maybe that doesn't really work so well for the interview when I do that. So, so guys, we're here to talk about your new graphic novel, Resistance, which is written by Val and beautifully illustrated by Kathryn. And Val, am I right in thinking this is your first graphic novel?
Yes, it is. It's the first time my work has been rendered in this form, and I'm so delighted by the result. I'm dying to do it again.
Now, guys, what was the genesis of the project? How did it come about?
Well, it started as a radio series for Radio 4. I was involved with a project that the Wellcome Foundation run called Experimental Stories. And they bring together radio dramatists, radio producers, and scientists, and they choose a theme every year. And in 2016, the year I was invited to do it, the theme was antimicrobial resistance. And the first speaker we had was Sally Davis, who at the time was the chief medical officer in England. And she essentially laid out a scenario that the drugs don't work anymore, the plague is coming and we're all going to die. And I thought, well, that doesn't leave me much scope. All I can do now is write an apocalypse. And so that's essentially what I did. And because it was... for me, it was a challenge in lots of ways, not least because it was speculative. It was a case of figuring out how a disease like this would spread and the impact that would have on the world as we know it. And so I wrote the radio dramas. They were well received. Everybody wanted me to turn it into a novel. I was too lazy to do that. And then my brilliant partner said, what about a graphic novel? I've always loved comics. So it was a no-brainer, really. So we found Kathryn, and we liked her work and said, would you be interested in doing this?
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask about that specifically, actually, your work, Kathryn, because with which I'm quite familiar, and I've seen many great sort of color examples of what you do, but you've chosen a very specific palette for this graphic novel. So could you talk about that for a sec?
Sure. Well, actually, that was a part of the design spec. It was, would you be interested in doing a graphic novel for Val McDermid? Absolutely. Okay, it's going to be this size and it needs to be in black and white. So that was just from the get-go. But it became one of those things, you hear artists talk about a lot. When you have limitations, your creativity tends to flourish. So it was, what can I do with black and white, with grayscale to make this visually interesting? Just pencils, inks, white crayons, watercolors, and ripped up newspapers.
Ah, right. Okay. Now I was going to ask specifically about your process though, because you've got your sort of essentially a kind of watercolor, almost kind of wash over the back of the image. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So every page started with a gray watercolor wash, different, bits of salt, different. I wanted every page to be unique and different. And because I don't work digitally, I work, analog rather than traditional. I wanted every page to have that feel of like it was touched and cared for and messed with, and that sort of, kind of grungy feel to it. Yeah.
Which of course matches perfectly the environment in which this drama plays out. So so you guys won't know this, but I do. I used to be a music journalist and I worked for the NME, and so the thing that you've chosen as the environment for this tale is of an environment I'm extremely familiar with, and also it's high levels of microbial passage around individuals. so Val, why did that come to you as the environment in which you decided to tell this tale?
Well, I was talking about how this thing would work in terms of a pandemic. And the people I consulted with most were my partners, colleagues in the vet school in Glasgow, who talked to me a lot about zoonoses and about disease spread and how you need a super spreader initiating event. And I wondered what sort of event that would be. And we kicked the idea around the dinner table quite a bit. And somebody suggested, what about a music festival? And I thought, absolutely perfect. People fly in from all over the globe, audiences, performers. They persist in not very hygienic conditions. People make unwise connections of a sexual nature.
Right.
People
Yeah,
eat things
absolutely.
they shouldn't put in their mouths. And it's a giant petri dish for disease. So I thought, why not? I'll put it in Northumberland where there isn't a music festival, so I can't be accused of pointing the finger at anyone in particular. But I thought this was, as I say, a great initiating event, and from there, of course, it spreads globally because these kind of events have global reach, as we now understand very well from the last 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, when did you originally fashion this story, Val?
Well, the radio plays went out in 2017, and then Kathryn spent her time, obviously, takes a long time to do the drawing, but we were actually ready to roll with this last summer, beginning of the summer. It was all ready to go, but we all thought that was not the time to do it, because at that point, if you remember last summer, COVID was a nightmare, a disaster with no end in sight. There was no vaccine in progress. It all just looked like the terrible events that we outline in the book were going to come to pass. But thankfully, here we are, about best part of a year later, and it's a very different picture, and it doesn't feel exploitative or doom laden in the way that it did maybe last year when we took that decision to hold back.
Yeah, no, I get that. And a testament to humankind, or the scientists of humankind's ability to actually just deal with something. And when it's an all hands to the pump scenario, what I've been fascinated by is the speed with which we've gone from the bleak midsummer of last year to where we are now. And I thought we'd get here, but the rate at which science has prevailed is really quite amazing and heartening.
Yeah. Because what we portray, of course, is the opposite side of the coin,
Yeah.
how it would go if that hadn't happened. And, you know, my friends who work in this area still say to me, you know, that this isn't the big one. The big one's still to come.
Yeah. I'm afraid that's right, isn't it? I mean, something that transmits like this, but with a far greater fatality rate, would be quite something to behold, and not in a good way, in an awful, terrible way. Kathryn, what was it like working on this story and illustrating this story, given the fact that this real life scenario that we've all lived with started to develop around you?
Yeah, it was very eerie. So I finished work on the pages at the end of February of 2020. So just as inklings were happening, we went away on a celebratory holiday, and we arrived back in the States the day before they shut the borders. So it was all very, very surreal. And it was almost like I had spent so much time learning a lesson about global pandemics as I was working on this, and then watching mistakes being made all around me that were like driving me a bit crazy. Like, no, don't we all know how this is supposed to go? Yeah, it was very weird. I felt very well prepared.
Yeah. It's scary how much we got right.
Yeah, right on.
The one thing I got catastrophically wrong was that there's one point where Zoe says to her husband, who works in the building trade, no wonder you're not getting any work. You know, nobody does home improvements in a pandemic. How wrong could I be? I think everybody in my street was doing very noisy home improvements.
So true, so true. I mean, yeah, I think there were some things that were difficult to predict, really. One is the rise of online shopping to quite the level it got to, you know, and therefore the spectacular rise of Jeff Bezos's fortune. I didn't necessarily predict that at the outset, you know, and it's fascinating.
disaster capitalism has certainly run riot over the last 15, 18 months. And again, as you say, that's not something necessarily one would have predicted. But it's quite clear that a lot of people have made a lot of money out of this, which is really quite nauseating.
Absolutely, particularly when they don't appear to be stepping their feet on the accelerator to disperse that newfound wealth and help people with it. Was surely morally that's what's incumbent upon these dudes to do. I would say,
Yeah.
you know, certainly that's what my Liverpool corporate union grandfather would be telling everybody right about now.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
yeah,
for sure.
I think hopefully, much like the Black Plague that hit Europe, afterwards there was a big sort of labor organizing, labor rights happened in the medieval ages, and I think that hopefully will happen, at least in the US.
Fingers crossed. I really do hope so. To talk back again about process for a second, given the fact that this was your first graphic novel, Val, how did you guys work together? Was it really a case of you gave the script to Kathryn and then you saw the whole book come back, or was it a consultative process as Kathryn fashioned the pages? How did you guys interact?
In the early stages, we sat down and we talked quite a lot about how it would work, and I certainly. I thought what's key right from the beginning was my understanding that the role of the narrator in the radio play was essentially going to be taken on by the artwork, because that would set the scene in the way that the narrator did. And we talked quite a lot about this, and then Kathryn sent over some sample pages and we discussed those. And really at that point, what came into play there was the most important thing in any collaboration, and that's trust. And I could see the way that Kathryn was going with this, and I really liked it. And that's the point where I said, okay, you've got the words now, make it fit the pictures and, do your thing. And I was so thrilled when I saw stuff starting to come feedback to me, the range of design, the range of method, the range of images really that go with the story that I had to put on into the ears, if you like. And what Kathryn put on the page is just added so much to it.
And I think I just like to echo like the word trust in that, like, if I felt Val's trust, and so that was very liberating and encouraging as an artist, just being like, okay, that she trusts that I can do a good job with this, so now I want to do a great job with this work.
Yeah, right. And you've both done such a lovely job with this book, which you can order from the links attached to this conversation. It's a beautiful package. It's a beautiful piece of work. Very well written, of course, beautifully illustrated. And before we go, because we're racing towards the end here, can I ask you both what you're working on at the moment?
Sure. I am puttering away at an adaptation of Macbeth and also shopping a PhD around.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I saw you got some tarot cards on the way soon as well. Is that right?
Yes, the tarot cards have just launched in the UK. They'll be in the US in June. But yeah, and that's a deck of original tarot cards that I've illustrated.
Awesome.
And they're very beautiful. They really are.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, the designs are fantastic. They really are.
At least with Macbeth, you don't have to wonder about what the author's going to say with the end product.
That's just.
Yeah, well, I've finished this year's book, which will be out in August, which is called 1979, and the clue is in the title. So now I'm working on the research for the next book in that sequence, which is going to be 1989. And I've got various other things in the pipeline, but essentially that's what I'm focusing on right now.
I can't wait. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending the time to chat with us here at Forbidden Planet TV. Once more, I'm Andrew Sumner. I've been talking to the amazing Val McDermid, the amazing Kathryn Briggs, about the new graphic novel Resistance, which you can order from the links attached to this conversation. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. It's a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.